bucks a barrel as gas rises a penny. AAA's national average for regular at $3.55 per gallon. That is still 2 cents less than last Wednesday. Some Americans may be stuck in Russia, even though they weren't even planning to go there.
The State Department says it's likely U.S. citizens were on board an Air India flight from New Delhi to San Francisco, which had to make an emergency landing in Russia because of a technical issue. The Boeing 777 carrying 216 passengers and 16 crew landed safely in the remote northeastern port city of Magadan, according to Air India, which is sending another flight to get everyone to California. Some family and friends expressing concern on social media. One person tweeting, "No one has been able to reach passengers 18 hours after landing." U.S. officials say they're continuing to monitor the situation closely. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
For years, Sweet and Low was the big sugar substitute across America until warning labels about saccharin that have since been removed were put on the famous pink packets. Then came Equal, which contains aspartame. Now Splenda leads the way. It's the brand name for sucralose.
But according to new research published in the Journal of Toxicology and Environmental Health, it's also genotoxic, meaning it breaks apart DNA and can lead to cancer. Studies have shown it damages the lining of the intestine and is associated with inflammation and oxidative stress. Splenda is 600 times sweeter than sugar and is the best-selling artificial sweetener in America. The makers of artificial sweeteners, though, assert their products are safe. Gianna Gelosi, Fox News.
The NBA Finals resume tonight. Game 3's in Miami. The Heat and Nuggets split the first two in Denver.
It's time for WPTV's First Alert Weather from the WPTV News Channel 5 newsroom. Now with 7 meteorologists covering the Treasure and Gold Coasts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now here's WPTV's First Alert meteorologist.
Heating up fast by this afternoon, early afternoon. We're going to hit a high of 88 degrees. Feels like temperatures, though, could be in the low 90s. Now, we will get some thunderstorms popping up after 2 o'clock. First inland, then tracking towards the East Coast. Also with the threat that a few of those storms could be severe. So watch out for flooding downpours, gusty winds, and even frequent lightning out there. As we go into the overnight hours, it should dry out, maybe just a lingering shower.
I'm WPTV First Alert meteorologist Jennifer Correa for WSTU 1450, Martin County's Heritage Station. Forbearances, working remotely, internet shopping, retail space, and rental income have been hit hard by COVID. If you're looking to restructure your debt, obtain financing or equity, Commercial Mortgage can help you out. Tim Mullen at Commercial Mortgage has been providing debt restructuring services since 2003. Tim never charges a front fee and all consultations are free. Tim only gets paid if he provides you a debt workout. Looking for a debt solution or financing? Give Tim a call at 772-872-6099 or visit commercialmortgagellc.com to schedule your free consultation.
The IRSC Tradition of Champions is continuing. Hi, I'm Jordan Bickett, the head volleyball coach at the River. We will have 11 new faces this season from as far away as Poland. We welcome back assistant coach Aaron Ergel, who starred here at the River. The entire athletic department averaged a 3.2 GPA, and 2024 will be no different. Our training season begins soon, with matches beginning in August. The Traditions of Champions continues at the River.
You are listening to WSTU, Stewart, Jupiter, and Indiantown, Martin County's Heritage Station.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, good morning and welcome back. Here we are, another beautiful Wednesday here on the Treasure Coast. And today, folks, it's going to be my last show for a little while. I'm going to go on a hiatus. I have some personal things I need to take care of. But it's been wonderful to be on the air for just about a decade now. And a lot of great guests that have been in the studio sitting across from me. And today is no different. I have Scott Watson sitting beside me. And Scott, you're here today to talk about the the bright lie, really.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
fight the bright lie. We're going to be talking about the train and a lawsuit and give some updates on that. So appreciate you coming in. But before we do that, I have some updates I wanted to share with everybody with the county. There was, as everybody knows, I covered the pet store ban about 6 months ago. And since then, the 2 pet stores have sued the county in hopes of staying open, of course. The county would not grandfather them in. And this was heard in court. They had an injunction. They were hearing for an injunction to keep the pet stores open while this is being heard in court. The hearing was last week, and folks, it did not go well for the county. It really did not go well for the county. If you were sitting in that courtroom, you would have been surprised. So yesterday, the county did meet, the Board of County Commissioners, and they voted unanimously to just concede to the injunction while this is going out. But I have on the line with me one of the pet store owners, Jill Scott. And Jill, you were sitting in that courtroom, and I just wanted to hear from you firsthand your thoughts and what's going on.
Good morning, Casey, and once again, thank you so very much for having us and shining a light on what has been going on with our stores and with the county. We're so very grateful to you for all the support you've given us and bringing this out to the public. Court last week. First off, let me say, technically it was a hearing of the other store, not our store, Noble Paw, but Wags About You, and his attorney, Mr. Rick Cozell. And I will tell you, Rick Cozell was just brilliant. He laid out the problems with the ordinance as it was drafted and why we feel that it's unconstitutional and just plain wrong. And he was able to, step by step, shine a light on everything that is wrong with the ordinance and, how we, as the stores, had given the county so many different options other than just to blindly and without reason or backup shut us down. So he did a phenomenal job, and many points the county conceded he was correct and we were correct. The drafting and the wording in the drafting of the ordinance just made no sense.
It's flawed.
It required the county to literally change the legal definition of certain things that are on the records, on the books. So we were very pleased. It seemed that the judge was in agreement. From where I sat, it's very confusing the way it was drafted, and I think everybody's troubled with the way it was done. We were very, very pleased, and again, Rick Cozell was just amazing.
And I understood as well the judge directly asked the county because Rick Cozell did bring up some points on how the ordinance is flawed, and the judge wanted to know more about that. And the judge directly asked the county's attorney a question, and it was something to do, I think, with where the pet stores are located. If they're located on ag land, can they sell the dogs? And the county answered something to the effect of, well, our ordinance doesn't cover if the dogs are out on a farm or that type of thing. And so the judge said, so you're saying they can sell dogs if it's on ag land? And the county would not answer them, yes or no. Asked them a very direct question, and I think that really showed with the judge that this is a very flawed ordinance. And we're going to be following this court case along, and I'll certainly be updating you through my Facebook page, even if I'm not on the air. But so far, the judge was very skeptical on this ordinance and the county's passing of it. So, Jill, I appreciate you coming in and giving us your view. I know you were sitting there in the courtroom that day. This injunction is a huge, huge win for the pet stores because they do get to continue to operate. And folks, I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you a little bit that getting an injunction, it truly means that the judge thinks you're going to win your case. It's tough to get injunctions, and there's been other counties that haven't been able to get injunctions, but Rick Cozell really put together such a well-thought-out argument that this injunction is granted. Counties conceded to it, and so we're going to file these court cases. The unfortunate part, folks, we're the taxpayers. We're on the hook because our county commission voted to ban these stores just months after they literally started talking about banning them within a month of them opening their doors. They had not done anything wrong, but they pretty much attacked these two businesses, in my view, and voted to close them down with no regard to how much money they'd put in the startup of a business. And boy, Scott, you're shaking your head. You know there's a lot of startup costs when you start a business.
Oh, I can't imagine what these poor people have been going through.
Yes, and now they have tremendous legal fees on top of this.
It sounds like more government overreach, which we have seen.
Yes, it continues on. So, Jill, thanks again. I wish you luck, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Casey, thank you again for all your support and everything you've done to help and bring this to the public attention. We are so appreciative of all your efforts.
My pleasure. And again, I call it an attack on the small businesses here in America, and this one happens to be a pet store. But pet store today, what's next? That's what I worry about. So, just because you don't like something, and it was perfectly legal. So, but Scott, I'm excited you're sitting in here because we are going to talk about Bright Lie, but every week I talk about a couple of your businesses because you're one of my sponsors, and I so greatly appreciate your support over the years. But, you have Indiantown Marina, and I'm telling you, I think you are, in my opinion, the best place for hurricane storage, and it's hurricane season, right?
Yeah, it most certainly is. It just started. Yes, ma'am.
So what size of boats can you take out there?
We can haul a boat up to 55 feet, 16 foot wide. There's also a new marine facility in Indiantown Marine Center, which can take boats bigger. They take boats from 50 foot on up to 150 feet, which is the Indiantown Marine Center owned by Joe Wall. So in Indiantown, we now have it covered. Anything that can float in Martin County, we can do hurricane storage.
Say, Indiantown does have us covered, any size.
We do.
And it's inland. It's down Lake Okeechobee, the waterway. So it's very safe. I mean, that's
we're about 20 miles inland from the coast. A great hurricane storage facility where our elevation is about 30 foot above sea level. So in Florida, it would have to be underwater for Indiantown to flood. So it's a safe place. Yes.
Then you're going to want to be on your boat. So.
Yes, absolutely.
but it's a great place, and also you can store your boat out there, and it's a do-it-yourself or full-service boat yard.
That's correct.
So all kinds of great things out there. And then, of course, I always have to talk about the little fun place down in the Pocket, Fish House Art Center. Tell us a little bit about that and where you're at.
I purchased that about 2 years ago from John Hennessy, and it's morphing into something. I'm not sure what yet, but we're having fun with it. And we're looking forward to the future, and with that, really excited what's going to happen in Port Salerno. Port Salerno itself is going to take off and be redeveloped, so we're excited about that.
That is wonderful, and this is right on the water. You have a marina there as well, so everything water-related, and it's really a fun place for family and friends to go. So,
well, thank you so much.
Fish House Art Center. All right, so now, Scott, let's do a little bit of an update here. Everybody knows the bridge was closed for, 21 days. And they have a nice little message and a video that said how wonderful they upgraded the bridge. It completed the critical elements of the rehabilitation of a 100-year-old St. Lucie Railroad Bridge. This is from Brightline. Brightline is implementing several mitigation measures prior to beginning train service to Orlando, including a real-time bridge opening and closure app, countdown clock, and bridge monitor. The app will be available for download for Brightline beginning service to Orlando this summer. Remaining construction of the bridge monitor house will continue through June, but will not impact the navigation channel. And the mitigation measures will provide predictability for the industry, allowing mariners to know when the bridge opening and closures are set to occur. What did they do on the bridge? They said they worked around the clock to complete the infrastructure work that included the replacement of the mechanical, electrical, and my little note here is cut off, but some other components. Boaters will now see several benefits, including dependability of bridge openings and closings, which reduce the risk of extended unplanned closures. Overnight closures had continued for a couple weeks. So that's our rosy Brightline update from Brightline, an app. But
it was funny about that bridge. They swore all along, and you've been involved in this situation, that bridge was in perfect shape and in perfect operating condition, and they swore to us. But suddenly, as they approach the actual service that they want to put in, and there's going to be a test period coming up here very, very shortly, that they're going to run a test period. And in the discussions with Brightline, I said they were asking to close the waterway for quite some time, and we had direct discussions with them when we found out about this, about when they were going to close it. And I said, well, look, guys, this isn't the best time of year for any of us to actually do this. And I said, can you put it off? And they said no. And I said, well, why couldn't you? I said, if you put it off, if you had to do these repairs next year, could you do them? No, we're not going to do them. And I said, well, why would you do that? Well, it became apparent that they wanted to do these repairs before this test period comes up, when the Coast Guard is
Okay.
actually be monitoring the trains that are running over this track. And if that bridge was to fail during that test period, it would really look bad on Brightline. So that became apparent in the discussions, that it was all about making sure that bridge does not break during the test period. That's my opinion.
It's still 100 years old. It's still a rust bucket.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And they try to convince us when you see a rust bucket that thing's in great shape. So.
I know it. It's anybody looking at it. I had some comments on the Florida Not All Aboard page. I saw that they were like, yeah, right, 100-year-old bridge that is rehabilitated in 3 weeks. Okay.
Well, thank God it's an operation. But what we're very concerned about is the actual operating schedule going forward. Meaning into the future, if Brightline was ever to run the theoretical 32 trains a day over that single track bridge, what that would mean, when you actually do the math, that means the bridge will be in the closed position almost all the time.
Because the operating cycle is about 18 minutes. And for folks that aren't familiar with the Stewart area, it's single track to boot. So you can't even run 2 trains past it at the same time. So somebody's got to be sidelined and wait.
So, and if you look at the New River Bridge down in Fort Lauderdale, the experience they've had with Brightline, it's been a disaster. They haven't been able to follow the operation schedule. They're now on their, I believe, 4th operation schedule, which means the public's gone to the Coast Guard and said, please, let's apply another operation schedule, because what you've got now isn't working. Because the Coast Guard's the one who's in charge. They make the decision on what the actual operating schedule would be. So with that said, we're not very hopeful that they'll be able to do anywhere near operate this thing, because it's already been proven at New River, and that's a double.
And that is a double track.
Double
That's
track.
right.
So with that said, we have, of course, been monitoring this situation for quite some time, talking to the Coast Guard and all those involved in the decision-making process as far as an operation schedule. And it became quite apparent to us that there were pressures mounting from the political end of it. Let's say maybe the investors who have bought the bonds in Brightline were going to put undue pressure, we believe, on the Coast Guard to do something other than the Coast Guard would do if they were left to their own devices. We met with District 7. We physically went down and met with the Coast Guard at the bridge section, the people that actually make the decision on the bridge operation schedules. I believe in my heart, and I believe everybody else involved in this believes that the Coast Guard wants to do the right thing. Those guys know what they're doing. They understand the situation.
Right.
They want to do the right thing. They basically steered us to Washington, saying that they didn't come out and say there was pressure, but we knew what was going on. So Dan Romance and I from Indiantown Marine Center and I both went up to Washington a few months ago and met with a proliferate, let's call it, with Homeland Security, the head of the Marine Transportation, the head of Coast Guard Bridge Regulation. People we met with Marco Rubio's staff. We met with Senator Scott's staff. We met with Brian Mast. We met with everybody we could and told them what our concerns were, because we wanted them to be aware that we're watching what's going on here, and we could see that there was pressure on the Coast Guard to not follow all what should be required in order to develop this new regulation schedule. So with that said, it became apparent that unless we took some real action, that we could see that some things, we were not going to have a positive outcome here.
Right.
So we filed a federal lawsuit back at the end of April against the Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers, and FEC at that point, but it's now Brightline. Because Brightline has already been advertising they're going to run these 32 trains a day at some point in the future, and we could see that was going to be problematic.
Is FEC still on the lawsuit as well?
I believe that they filed a motion to hand it over to Brightline. I'm not sure the legal ease of that, but we're dealing with Brightline now.
So, folks, just to give you an idea here a little bit, Florida East Coast Railway, what we're calling FEC, owns the land and owns the tracks, and Brightline is owned by a different company and has a perpetual lease to use the tracks. So that's why I can see why Florida East Coast Railway would be on the lawsuit, and it would make sense. So I don't know the ins and outs of the legal area either, but it's very convoluted. It started out being started by one company under Fortress, the umbrella of Fortress, which was then sold to SoftBank, and then the freight division was sold to Grupo Mexico, a Mexican company. So we have a Mexican company owning the freight division and the land and the tracks, and then we have Fortress that was owned by SoftBank, and I understand now there's actually another sale that went through with a Saudi Arabian company for Fortress. So I'm not sure which company or which foreign-owned company, but it is foreign-owned, actually owns Brightline now. It's a big old mess. It really is, and
it's a big mess, and it's what it really comes down to is, and a lot of people aren't aware of what's going to take place here with that. If Brightline is allowed to run the train schedule they want to run, the 32 trains a day, like I said, the bridge will be in the closed position for the vast majority of time, which is unacceptable to the citizens of Martin County and the marine businesses that navigate through that bridge. It's already an obstruction to navigation, and it's going to be a whole lot worse.
It will, and I want to point out too, those 32 trains are during the day. They start at like 6 in the morning and end 10 at night. So it's not during the night. That's when we're going to see, I'm sure, more of the freight trains.
Obviously during the busiest navigation period of the day as well, they want to run these trains. So with that said, one of the main reason for filing this lawsuit was not to attack the Coast Guard or the Corps of Engineers. It was actually to relieve them to some extent, because now they know that the judiciary is looking over their shoulder to make sure they cross every T and dot every I as they should, because they want to do that.
Right.
I believe that they truly want to do that. So my guess is the Coast Guard's probably relieved that the pressure from above is now, they know that there's someone else that is pushing back. There's no judicial review of Coast Guard decisions, but a judge can look at it and say, well, how exactly did you arrive at that decision?
Yes.
Does that make any sense whatsoever? They can't change the operation schedule. A judge can't say, no, I want it to operate this many hours a day, but he can question the methodology. How did you arrive at that decision, which is what we're looking to do. And hopefully the Coast Guard will be able to put out a regulation schedule. The first regulation schedule is going to come out. It's going to be a test period.
Okay.
In which the Coast Guard will put out an initial regulation schedule, and then they will actually run the trains. And that test period could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months. My guess is it'll probably be a 6-month period. That the Coast Guard will then monitor the data, do the trains run on time when they say they're going to, how much time is the bridge closed, how much marine traffic is there. Are we creating an unreasonable obstruction in navigation? Well, without question you are. You've got 20 litigants or 20 plaintiffs in this lawsuit, 20 marine businesses that are telling the Coast Guard it's a problem. We already know it's a problem, and it's going to be a much, much bigger problem. And
absolutely.
One of the key things that's even different, this is a federally authorized waterway. This is the Okeechobee Waterway. New River is not a federally authorized waterway. It's an emergency escape route. It's part of the state SSI system. It's an integral part of Florida, and it's the only cross-state Florida waterway there is. And we've got vast numbers of marine businesses, mine, Joe's, and many, many others along the Okeechobee Waterway that traffic needs to be able to traverse this without an obstruction that could hold them up for hours.
That's absolutely right. Folks, if you want to find out more about this and support the lawsuit, you can go to fightthebrightlie.com. Fightthebrightlie, LIE.com. This lawsuit, it was brought, as Scott was saying, Indiantown Marine Center, Marine Max, Mobro Marine, Bale Brothers, McCauley Marine Services, Ferrari Construction Company, DL Milling Family, Atlantic Golf Dredging, Willis Custom Yachts, Meridian Marina, Indico Properties, HMY Yacht Sales, and Simply Yachts were the initial plaintiffs. And I know you've got some more on board.
Correct.
And folks, they really can use anybody's help. I know I've received some messages personally after the show that we did, the initial show we did on the Bright Lie. Just residents that are west of the bridge are very concerned.
If I was a resident on the west side of that bridge, I'd be highly, highly concerned, because it's going to be obstruction to navigation. It's going to obviously have an effect on property values, because everybody's going to want to live on the east side of the railroad bridge, should this become the problem that we believe it will. So with that said, yes, I believe that, and the problem is a lot of people are not aware yet of what this is going to mean. So even I can foresee the Bright Line running some trains to begin with. They're not going to run the full 32 trains right off the bat. I cannot see that. First, they've got to see if they've even got the demand to run that many trains, which I highly doubt. I don't think
they run them empty down south, unfortunately. So
I do not believe that their business model makes any sense.
No,
but that's a whole other discussion. But I do not believe it makes any sense.
So I want to point out as well that the Marine Industry Association of the Treasure Coast, while they're not part of this lawsuit, they are putting a camera up on the bridge.
Yes, the camera started operating yesterday. As you could imagine, we're a little suspicious of who's collecting data, and we want to be able to collect our own data. We know the Coast Guard is going to make efforts to collect its data as far as marine traffic and trains and so on and so forth. But so we've gone to quite an expense to install cameras so that we can monitor what's going on at the bridge and record it and so on and so forth, so that we give that to the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard, once they make their decision, let's say it's 6 months from now, when they gather all the data, and they'll make their decision based on that data. So we want to make sure they get accurate data.
Oh, Scott, that is so important, because I remember with the train, when they did their environmental impact study, they had statistics in there on how many boats were going through the bridge, and they claimed for the year. But what they did was they used January, our lowest boating time of the year, the lowest number of boats going through the bridge. They used those numbers and extrapolated them for the entire year.
That's an interesting point, because we're not sure what this test period is going to be. But my guess is, if I'm Brightline, it's probably going to be a time of year when we don't have as much boat traffic as we would in other times of the year. So this will be an interesting exercise. We'll see what the Coast Guard puts out as far as a test period regulation schedule, and go from there.
And it is interesting, because you were talking, you went to Washington, D.C., you've met with the Coast Guard, you went to Miami, and there's a picture of former Commissioner John Haddock. So we were up in Washington, D.C. talking about water issues or the train, I don't remember which, and every time I see the photo, I think about that. And he's pointing each way, because that's what the government agencies do. They point the finger at somebody else. Not our fault.
What we're seeing here is, the poor Coast Guard down here, District 7 is, now when we went to Washington, the head guys told us, well, we're going to do what District 7 tells us to do. And we're like, oh, okay.
And they said, we got to do what Washington tells us.
We're not going to tell them what to do. Yeah, so we could see that we could see that the railroad has a lot of influence, as we all know they do. And there's a reason there's a term called being railroaded.
That's right.
That's what they do. So, with that said, I don't know if a lot of people realize that this is a private company. This is not a public transportation system. This is a private company that's asking to basically shut down the waterway in Stewart because we are the bottleneck. This bridge is the choke point. It's only 6 foot clearance when it's closed. That means, 99% of the boats in Martin County cannot get underneath it. So why should, of course, one of the answers or one of the solutions, which isn't really a solution, is build a new bridge. Well, who's going to pay for that bridge?
That's right.
And why should the public be paying for a private business to build a bridge so they can run their 32 trains a day? I said, this is going to be an interesting thing to watch.
They're trying to make it so miserable for us that, we're all going to be begging for the new bridge so they can get the government to pay for it.
Well, I say one thing, and I'm going to give Brian Mass some kudos here. He has been fighting like a rabid dog on our behalf against Brightline and pointing out all of these fallacies. Has there been a feasibility study done on whether Brightline will actually make any money? No. On and on and on. So Brian has, I believe his attack point has been, look, you're never going to get my cooperation, if I'm Brian Mass, my cooperation to federal funds to build a bridge unless you treat us right now.
That's right.
And the regulation schedule is going to be operating that bridge for the next 10 years. It better be favorable to the citizens of Martin County, or you can forget about ever getting money for another bridge. And I believe that
good for him.
It's probably the best strategy there is. And Brian, as you can tell, man, he does not mince words when it comes to this. So I'm very, very happy and proud of Brian for taking the lead on this, because without him, I don't think we'd be where we are today. And I believe, when I say where we are today, I believe we're in a position where it's going to be really, really hard for the Coast Guard, with a straight face, and like I said, they want to do the right thing, to come out and not give us at least equal time on that bridge,
100%.
Equal time for navigation.
Scott, I'm going to zip over here to Facebook comments. Amy Pritchett, school board member, appreciate you tuning in as always. She was talking about the puppy stores, that she was happy to hear they got the injunction, and she says she always feels that adoption is the choice, but you shouldn't prohibit others to be able to choose their pets the way they want to, whether it's purchasing or adopting. Mm-hmm. And she loves Port Salerno. It's her home. Also, Jackie Blake says, what is the ultimate goal of this lawsuit? And please know everyone in Palm City area supports it.
The ultimate goal is to get an operation schedule that's fair to both navigation and the railroad. We're not anti-railroad. We just want, the Coast Guard's job. Look, here's how it works. The waterway was there first. It has priority. The train, then bridge was built over the waterway, so they're second in line, let's call it, for transportation needs. So the Coast Guard's job, their duty, is to keep navigation free and open. So anytime there's an obstruction to navigation, and a bridge is naturally an obstruction, then it becomes, okay, what is a reasonable obstruction to navigation? In this case, there's no way anybody can say that, oh, the train should get more time in that location than navigation should. It just does not pass the smell test. When we were in Washington, D.C., and I can't remember which, it was one of the committee members had said straight up, he said the Coast Guard has lost its way. They've forgotten what their duty is, and I don't think they've forgotten anything. I think the pressures from railroads and so on and so forth, and the politicians above them, who are the ones who allocate the funds that fund them, are the ones who twist arms and make things like this happen.
And Scott, you really have to understand, folks, that there's a lot of power behind the scenes here. Fortress owns a lot of media. You've seen a lot of headlines, how wonderful Brightline is. Well, folks, they own the newspapers.
That's exactly
right. They
right.
have the connections.
It's absolutely funny when you look at all the positive media that's out there, and they all talk about train stations. They get everybody looking at that shiny object. Oh, you got to have a train station.
Right.
You know, and all the politicians, oh my God, I need a train station. Forgetting the fact it's going to destroy downtown Stuart.
Right.
And I won't name names, but I mentioned this to a city of Stuart official, and he admitted is absolutely going to destroy downtown Stuart, but he was going to ride Brightline, down to Miami.
Yep.
And I look at him and I go, oh my God.
Exactly.
Where are you?
How can you support that?
Why
and
would
say
you
that?
support something you know is going to destroy your community?
Exactly. And then he says, and that's my point. Some of the stores like, oh, Brightline Station, people come shop here. No, people are going to go shop to Miami. They're going to leave here in our little small businesses.
But they convince everybody with these train stations.
How wonderful.
But the funny thing is, when Brightline has put out their fee schedule on Facebook, I mean, the comments are 90% negative, as it's way too expensive because it's not a publicly funded transportation system. It is a private railroad, and I do not believe that their math works.
It doesn't work. And even at those prices, they're still losing money.
Yeah, so it's going to be, like I say, the next couple of years will be interesting. Our goal, and to answer her question, is to have a regulation schedule that works for us, for Martin County.
Lisa, I appreciate you tuning in. She said there is so much to address in this county. You are right about that. But this is the tip of the iceberg. Jackie said, thank you for the information. I remember them promising a bridge that allowed for maritime traffic. A private company, Brightline, should pay for it. Couldn't agree with you more, Jackie. They should pay for it. They did promise it, but of course not in writing. And this company, from the very start, says things they don't mean, and they don't keep their promises. They've been very shady. Scott, if you can put on some headsets, or do you have some headsets for him, Evan? This is not plugged in, but we have someone on the line. I want to make sure you hear their question.
Okay.
So, it's just one of those train companies. They did promise the bridge, and it's extremely expensive. And also, I wanted to point out, talking about them not making money, they're trying to actually lease the tracks out. And I don't know how this works, Scott, because remember, Grupo Mexico owns the tracks, and Brightline is leasing them for the use of Brightline. But Brightline is also leasing the tracks to another train system in South Florida. So they're doing it so they can pay the interest on their bonds. Because they're not making money. Miami Dade's already agreed to it. They're trying to get Broward on. It's like a $50 million hit and then $12 million a year.
Well, what I think is what's that game where you run around the chairs and then what's it, merry-go-round? What's that called?
Red Rosie.
Red Rosie. Well, I think what's going to happen here at some point, they're going to go, time to sit down, and who's ever left standing with the bonds in their hand is going to be the giant loser.
Yeah, I agree.
And then they're going to ask for the big government bailout because so many tentacles have already got into the communities and got people to invest in a losing proposition. Just look at California's high-speed rail system. They spent billions and billions and billions of dollars and then finally gave up.
After, and I think it was like $80 billion.
Yeah, an ungodly amount of money, and that's my prediction for this as well.
This started at $1 billion, and I think we're hitting around 4 or 5 now. Right. So we have Robert on the line with us. Robert, thanks for calling in.
Yes, I was a security officer on that Stewart Railroad Bridge from 1991 to 1998. And during that period of time, I was threatened so many times. Because of that situation, even emergency vehicles couldn't get through while the bridge was down. I contacted so many times to notify them that I had, when they had the parade of the boats, that I needed to have even emergency vehicles go by. The situation existed, and Brightline or nobody else should be on that railroad bridge. And like I said, I was there from 6 in the morning to 6 at night sometimes. It was 6 at night to 6 in the morning. And that was from 91 through 98 when we were terminated, the security company. And so therefore, I had experience where I was in North Carolina, and I took the train back, and there's an Okeechobee train station where Brightline could use that to go where they have to go. The railroad bridge over the river where I worked for those years is not capable and should never even be thought of using for transportation to go for rich people to go from Miami to Orlando. It should be definitely be.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm to get here real life observations of what's taken place there in the past and what's going to be taking place in the future. We appreciate your phone call, and but yes, we agree with you.
100%. And, this is a train track. It would be nice if it was a bike path or something that went through our towns, But it's not. And, that was always an argument is why don't you go west? And the train company is very clear about that. They own the land here. And they don't own the land or the tracks out to the west, so they're not going to go. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times Rusty Roberts, at the time he's in government relations now, and he's doing a very good job at it because the government's supporting the train in a lot of different areas. But we own the land, we own the tracks, and we will do what we want. And that's what they've been doing.
That's exactly right. Going back to the Okeechobee Waterway and the importance of the Okeechobee Waterway to Florida and an emergency escape route and so on and so forth. And after the last hurricane, we saw that there's very little coordination between anything that takes place. I mean, so we've been working with the Coast Guard, with the Corps of Engineers, with the county, EOC, and so on. So we're trying to put a coordinated effort so that we can tell the boating public what's going on and what to expect when bridges are going to close and when bridges are going to open. We have no idea what Brightline's emergency plans are for a hurricane. Hopefully they'll shut down the trains, but we have no idea at this point. So it's a point of major concern because we cannot have boats backed up at that bridge should a storm come. And we did this last go-around because we found out that when the Coast Guard goes into what they call Zulu, that's a message to all the bridge operators. They can close the bridge when they want. But they're not telling them to close the bridge. They're just telling them they can close it if they want. Well, then it's up to the local EOCs, the local bridge operators, to close it whenever they want. Well, that can turn into chaos, as you can imagine, when there's no coordination. So we're working on that, along with we're asking the Corps of Engineers to please staff the locks. Right now they staff them 10 hours a day. They used to be 16 hours a day. We'd like to go back to 16 hours a day and allow for more movement, especially during storm events and so on and so forth. But yeah, back to the Brightline. I think that once the citizens of Martin County fully grasp the situation, this is not a train that goes past a traffic bridge, a car traffic bridge. It takes 18 minutes to cycle that bridge each time a train goes by. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really fearful for Stewart, what it's going to do to Confusion Corner.
100%. And I want to point out, too, we talked about home values west of the bridge. And we're not just saying that, folks. Martin County the property appraiser, Laurel Kelly at the time, had a study commissioned, and it proved the homes west of the bridge will lose value. So we're not just saying this. This is really a huge deal. Jackie, I'm going to get to your question in a second. She wanted to know about the agreement the commissioners made with Brightline that they can't even discuss Brightline, and I will definitely cover that. So, but Scott, this bridge, people say, well, once it's open, boats can go back and forth real quick, and they can go side by side. They can't. It's only 60 feet wide.
It's lucky not even 60. It's 50 feet wide, 50. And actually at some point it's more narrow than that, and none of the bridges align with each other. So if you're in a bigger vessel, you really have to go through single file. And you've also got currents running. It could be it could be a very tricky situation. And you can imagine now if we have boats lined up on both sides of this bridge when it opens, what's going to happen? There's going to be a mad rush to get through there. Safety was already a huge concern there, and it's going to get much, much worse. Now, let's talk about commercial traffic. And if you're towing a barge, our barge pusher comes through there, and they have to. And see, that bridge is required by law to open when commercial traffic approaches, because if you're pushing a barge, you can't control that thing. Right. You've only got certain parameters you can deal with. You've got currents running and so on and so forth. So you need to be under power. When you're approaching that bridge needs to open, and it's required by law. No one has any idea how much commercial traffic is going to be approaching that bridge and when.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
We're just running. We're going to go. We'll see what happens. I mean, let's just throw caution to the wind.
Interesting. Like I said, it's going to be interesting.
And imagine the boaters, too, that are frustrated because as Saturday morning, Friday morning, Sunday, when everybody wants to get out and they don't make it through that little 15-minute opening and they know they're going to have to wait another 45 minutes, that's where the accidents are going to happen because they're going to rush.
I'm praying that the Coast Guard, like I said, we ask for everybody's support in Martin County. Let your voices be heard. That we want equal time, we want fairness in that regulation schedule, and we'll see what the Coast Guard comes out with. We don't know.
So, Jackie, you asked, what is the agreement the commissioners made with Brightline that they can't even discuss Brightline? Folks, if you go to my YouTube channel, The Casey Ingram Show, just about a month ago, I did a show exclusively on the county settlement agreement. It's a good listen, and I go over that agreement in detail. But to answer your question, Jackie, the county commission agreed to not speak out against the train, to oppose the train, to even meet with groups that oppose the train in their settlement agreement. And they made a lot of bad decisions, including one of the things here with the bridge. The county actually agreed that the bridge should be open just 15 minutes an hour to the mariners. The county agreed to that with the Brightline.
The good thing is the county doesn't really have any effect on the Coast Guard. They can't make a decision
Thank
for the
goodness
Coast Guard.
For
the
that.
only people that make a decision on regulation schedule is the Coast Guard. So thank God. But hey, we get to pay for half of a railroad. That will never happen. But that's the shiny object again.
Yeah, the county did agree in their settlement because they said this was the time to negotiate and get things for the benefit of the community. And so they settled. And honestly, they settled 4 days before that lawsuit was going to be decided with the judge. They settled on a Saturday. The judge decided the following Tuesday. If they had just done nothing,
right,
they did not have to settle. They just could have lost the case. We all knew that was going to happen. It was appealed by Indian River County.
Right.
Martin County could have just sat back and did nothing. We were not charged attorney's fees. Indian River County was not. So this settlement agreement, folks, was really, really bad. And they agreed, the county commission, to pay for half of a station if they build it in the county. And they acted like they were doing a favor, like, wow, we got them to pay for half the station. No, they got you to pay for half the station. So I love the newspaper just put out this big article about, in a survey, where do you want the station? I'm like, they're going to go to whoever pays for the station, and we've already agreed to pay for half of it. So St. Lucie County, you want it, you got to pay for it.
Every media outlet in the world to ask people where they want to see a station.
I know. I know. And by the way, the settlement agreement, 5 years. They don't have to worry about a station until 5 years. So, that's not going to happen anytime soon because they don't want to stop. So, tell us a little bit more exactly how it's impacting the marine businesses west of the bridge.
Well, obviously, with the threat of this railroad bridge being shut most of the time, it's been very concerning for all the marine engineers. I mean, there is a ton. As you can see, there's already 20 litigants involved in this, or 20 plaintiffs involved. The word's already out that, oh my God, we may not be able to get to your facility. It's going to affect who and when people can get to our facility if they choose to come to us at all. And with Joe Walsh's investment in Indiantown Marine Center, which is a world-class facility he's built in Indiantown, he's spent multiple tens of millions of dollars on this thing so far. It's a hell of an opportunity for Martin County. It's a hell of an opportunity for Indiantown. It's a much-needed facility. And, of course, my facility, Indiantown Marina, we're needed. We provide a service for Martin County, and if people can't get to us, what good is it? I mean, Indiantown is an opportunity zone. The whole idea was to spur economic activity, and the Okeechobee Waterway is a great place to do it. And it will be, and we believe that Indiantown will be the marine center of Florida before it's over with, because we have all that coastline, let's call it, or a canal line that you can put any number of marine facilities, manufacturing facilities. We've been talking to a lot of people about coming to Indiantown and coming to the Okeechobee Waterway, and to have this screw that up is just beyond belief.
It really is, because especially when you think about the bigger yachts that Joe can handle, folks, ahead of a hurricane, they are streaming through at a constant pace.
Absolutely.
A constant pace. And that's a lot of money for these local
businesses. That's why we also need the locks to go to a 16-hour schedule, because some of it actually has to do with how many lock tenders they have. They can only work a lock tender 10 hours a day. So let's say the hurricane comes and we need 24-hour day operation.
Right.
They don't have the lock tenders because they're only allowed to work them 10 hours a day. They don't have enough lock tenders to actually man it for 24 hours. So if we go to a 16-hour daily schedule, then they would theoretically have enough people to run it 24 hours if they needed to.
Okay. So Jackie says, what can we as residents do to help get some satisfaction for this issue? To help, to find help,
I think just public awareness. Everybody, fightthebrightlie.com. You can go on there and find out the latest information, but have people aware of the issue and that comments to the Coast Guard, not we hate the train, but real comments to the Coast Guard. If we approached the bridge, we sat there for 25 minutes, this happened, we observed this, send those comments to the Coast Guard, which if you go to FightTheBrightLine.com, we'll have that link on there to the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard will take those comments into consideration, but they can't be, we just hate the train or, blah, 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 blah. We need factual observations of what they encountered at the bridge, which will be helpful to the Coast Guard when they say, well, look here, we've got a bunch of observations that this regulation schedule or this test schedule isn't going to work or is going to work.
Did you get any comments from the Coast Guard? Because they've actually had, I think, 3 public comment periods previously about the bridge. The last one was just ahead of the election. Mm-hmm. I know there was a lot of comments that came in. Do you know the result of what the Coast Guard said?
I don't know if they're keeping score, how many are for or against. Obviously, there was a tremendous...
Most were for.
That want to see a fair operation schedule. But, Brightline's done a good job of hiding what's actually going to happen here until it happens. And when it happens, there's a splat count, we call it. How many people have already been killed by almost 100.
Yeah, and I think we had 92
wait till it starts
yesterday.
coming through Martin County at 100 miles an hour, 32 trains a day.
Yes.
Whose kid, wife, family member is going to be killed by this train at a traffic stop? I mean, it's a real threat to Martin County, and I don't think people are going to wake up until it actually is in their face. And when I say wake up, there's just hard to grasp what's going to take place here.
It truly is, and they don't have the fencing that keeps it, a sealed corridor. With even down south, that's why so many people are getting hit. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's stupid people." No, folks, this is a lack of safety on the part of the company.
Look at Confusion Corner.
Oh.
People get stuck on the tracks all the time just because they paralyzed. They get frozen, not know which way to go.
They do.
Now here comes the train.
They do.
What are you going to do then?
Somebody turns, and all of a sudden you're stuck on the tracks, and then it goes down, and that's what happens. I mean, people are trying to turn, the traffic stops.
So we're
you don't
talking about
expect
32 Brightline trains, but there's going to be another 12 or more freight trains, which take even more time to pass. So when you do the math,
right.
It does not work.
It's not good. I mean, these tracks, we all handled the freight and accepted that. And, this was shut down for passenger rail back in the 60s because they couldn't make a profit.
Right.
And, Brightline, they came back. I mean, they're just grandfathered in because the tracks were here first. It doesn't matter that they're foreign owned now.
The people that make money on these type of train systems are the people that sell the bonds and the people that have the right of way that might need to be purchased. But at the end of the day, I think what's going to happen, this is just my opinion, that when Brightline fails, FEC will be sitting there with a whole bunch of new infrastructure that someone else paid for.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And freight is where the money is with the train systems.
I think everybody knows
that.
Yep.
So Amy said small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We need to protect them, and it's incredible to me that more people are not outraged by this. We need to support this effort. Absolutely, Amy. And, people have been outraged. It's been going on a decade. And people are outraged, and we're frustrated because we seem to be handed nothing from our government officials.
Well, that's the part that's really frustrating. The railroads have been unregulated for quite some time. I mean, there was a little bit of regulation when there was actually a Commerce Committee in Congress that overlooked the railroads. But now all you have is the Railroad Transportation Board, which is owned by the railroad. So at some point, Congress is going to need to enact some legislation to put some sort of regulation on the railroads because they're just absolutely run roughshod. The only savory we have here is that the Coast Guard actually has jurisdiction over that bridge because it's over the water.
And through the communities, there are no speed limits. There is none. There's none. I mean, we need legislation. We need laws.
They can block any traffic intersection they want for as long as they want, and there's nothing you can do about it.
They act.
Yeah.
Yep. Marty, I appreciate you calling in. If you have a question or comment for Scott, 772-220-9788, 220-WSTU. Marty, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning. I'm a retired Stewart police officer, and several years ago, while Tri-Rail was doing experimental runs in this area, a train station was designed to go between Ernest Produce and East Coast Lumber, with parking on the courthouse side at Sailfish Point and Kiwanis Park side, as well as voluntary or contributory shuttle service to the downtown area from the city of Stewart. It would make a nice fit. I don't know how it really will fit these days if a train is coming, but that train station was already designed. And I looked at those plans, and the police department had input on public safety with lighting and egress and parking and all those things. So those plans are on the shelf somewhere.
Well, definitely appreciate you calling in, and I've heard that location bantied around as well as many others, but Brightline has not commented whatsoever where they'll put a station, if it's even going to be in Martin County.
Yeah, we have suspicions that it'll be up in Fort Pierce somewhere if there is a station on the Treasure Coast, because that's all they've committed to, I believe, is they're just going to put a station on the Treasure Coast.
Yes, it'll be one station. That's right. So, but very interesting that you've already done a study.
That is interesting information.
Well, whoever builds the station, the plans are already in place, and the architect doesn't have to redesign them. They're already on paper.
Well, this is government. They'll have to redo the whole thing.
That's right.
Appreciate the call in. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marty. You're absolutely right about that, Scott.
We'll have to have
it's been too
long.
We'll
do the whole thing. And then somebody will say, wait a minute, there was a...
Buildings have changed, so. But, folks, again, it's fightthebrightlie.com. Great organization. You guys really can use all the help you can get. It's in federal court that it's being heard. And kind of, how long do you think this... You never know with court cases, but time frame.
Through the grapevine, I hear hopefully the Coast Guard is going to be issuing this test regulation schedule, and that's going to be an indicator of where this may go. I'm hoping, one way or the other, whether it's good or bad. But we're hopeful that the Coast Guard does the right thing. And like I say, once again, I know the Coast Guard wants to do the right thing, and the lawsuit I think brings to light the fact that you've got 20 plaintiffs who are integral to that to the navigation issue, and they're telling you it's a problem. They're telling you ahead of time, and that's what we were worried about, that we're just going to get railroaded. So we had to do something, and this is what the action we've taken. And I believe that my guess is both with the Coast Guard and the Corps of Engineers, they took it with a
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is a really good thing because, like you said, with these 20 businesses, it's serious. When people can't get out to the sandbar, out to the ocean, that's why we boat.
Yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact. And here's the other thing, and Brian Mass brought this up. There's been no economic impact study done on what the impact, what is the train actually going to generate in revenue? Okay, that's number one.
Right.
And then what are you going to lose in navigation, commercial navigation and residential property values? What's that economic impact going to be? And how does that weigh?
That's right.
What's the criteria these decisions are made with? No one knows.
Nobody knows.
It's always this, equity doesn't mean equal. And you start hearing these, and you're like, oh, I can see it coming.
That's right. Yeah. There are a couple new marinas going in that are east of the bridge. One is right here in Stewart. But they're not going to handle the big boats like you guys can handle out there in Indiantown.
Like I said, the future of the big boat traffic and stuff in Martin County is on the Okeechobee Water, without question.
It was honestly the best place to keep them for hurricane storage. And they really, you see all those boats down south, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, those big yachts, those super yachts. When a hurricane comes, they have to move out of there. They cannot stay at those docks.
And the problem is there's not enough capacity for hurricane haul out when a hurricane does come. My phone rings off the hook. If I had the capacity, the equipment, the time, and material, I could probably haul out 1,000 boats. I mean, I'm not kidding you.
I believe
the panic that takes place. And now you can't even buy a boat unless you have a hurricane plan, which means you have to show the insurance company where you're taking the boat and how it's being hauled out, and on and on and on. So it's integral to the boating community from top to bottom, from a new boat manufacturer. If there's no place for those boats to be hauled out in a hurricane or be serviced, they're not going to be able to sell the boat.
And folks, again, with Indiantown Marina, you talk about that. That is very true. You need to make your reservations now. You need to make your reservations.
The problem is the hurricane clubs, for example, we have one. Indiantown Marina Center has one. They're probably already full as far as the emergency haul out type stuff. So if you're worrisome, get your boat out to us now and store it for the summer. It's not that expensive. It's less than actually docking your boat at a dock in Stewart. If you're going to be gone for the summer, do it now.
Just do it now. Don't even worry about it, because it is the worst thing in the world to have somebody call. The hurricane's already been named. Once that storm's named, you're out of luck.
I mean, I have people call me saying, I don't care how much it costs, and I said, it's not about the money. I don't have the equipment or time to do it.
Yep, it's too late. So really, I can't be more forceful about that. Get your reservations in. Get your boat out there if you can. Either way, but have a place to go, and don't wait for the hurricane.
To gloat about Joe's place, because I'm very proud of what Joe's done out there, him and Dan Romance. it's the next step for Martin County to store
Well,
vessels.
it's exciting, Scott, that you talk about that, but that really is a great marine center for Martin County,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
there's miles of waterway out
I've
there.
known Joe.
Miles.
Joe's been out in Indiantown for over 20 some odd years. When I met him, when I got Indiantown Marina, and he's been working on that project for quite some time, as you can imagine, and to see it come to fruition. And it's just exciting to me.
He's right across from the new high school that's going in out there, and it's really.
And as a matter of fact, Joe is donating 5 acres of land for a new marine trade school to go in.
That's fantastic.
That's going to be in unison with the high school and IRSC.
It's a trade that is desperately needed in this area.
It's very exciting. It's like Joe's a great guy. He wants to give back. He wants to give back, and this is the way he's going to give back. So, like I said, Indiantown will be, in my opinion, the marine center of Florida before it's over with.
Absolutely. It's very exciting to hear and know, and a lot of good things are happening in Indiantown. I've covered that a lot over the years. Amy, I appreciate you tuning in as well, and people are really appreciating the information that we're sharing here today. And again, fightthebrightlie.com. Go to that website. I know you guys will accept any financial help because lawsuits are not cheap. Yep, lawsuits are not cheap.
No, they're not.
The only ones that make money are the lawyers.
Yeah. And our lawyer is up in Washington, D.C. He's got a nice office.
He's really expensive. So, Marcia, she said, beautiful marina, and Joe is very generous. So another person agreeing with you. But folks, again, this is my last show for a little while. I'm going to go on hiatus for a bit. Hope to be back here a little bit later this year. We'll see how things go. But appreciate you all tuning in. It's been a real joy and a pleasure to just share community news over the years, and boy, we've covered a lot of topics. So there's always something happening in the county. All I can say is, in my parting words, is please stay involved and be involved. You can follow commission meetings on MCTV right at the County Commission website. You can do the same at the City of Stuart, Indiantown, Zoom meetings. All our elected officials are in the light, and I only have 10 seconds. But just stay involved, and hopefully I'll be back soon. And Scott, thank you for all your support over the years.
I just want to say thank you for all you've done, and we look forward to the future with you because I know you'll be back.
Thank you so much. Take care now. Everybody have a wonderful summer.